Ooh, that looks tasty.
In a world where a dark curse has both ended all warfare and created a horrific wasteland, all conflict is settled in the arena. But what happens when that wasteland begins to spread? Welcome, folks. Today, the Hungry Gamer is back with another Kickstarter preview / review. Because today, I am talking about Arena, the contest. Now, Arena is published by Dragori Games, designed by Alexandre Aboud, Clayton Machado, Danilo de Alcantara Magales. I'm sure I destroyed that name, I apologize. With most of the illustrations by Guilherme Batista. And what Arena the Contest is a two-part game. There's the PvP version, which is the arena, in which ostensibly different nations, when they have conflict, because war is impossible due to this curse that every time large groups of troops mass in a fight, there's always some kind of natural cataclysm. The worst of these created this horrible wasteland where all these nasty monsters are. So nations hire champions and they send them out to battle in the arena, and this is taking the place of wars. However, there is also a PvE solo co-op campaign mode, or one-off scenarios, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, I don't know the whole story of the campaign because I'm only a few missions in, 4 to be exact, but it would seem that ostensibly it has to do with this wasteland, which seems like it's spreading. Now, that might not be the actual story when I get through it, but for the moment, that is what I have. And that mode of the game is more of a dungeon crawler. Sometimes it's just kind of a straight fight like I have set up here. I have this fight set up against the undead dragon, and this is not the right map for it. It's a little bit random how I have it set up, so I don't spoil anything. And then that is a campaign mode where you have your heroes that continue moving on. They can get different artifacts, and they can level up, and just like any other dungeon crawler. And I also called this video a preview because in just about a week or so, maybe less, they are going to be launching their next Kickstarter. And the main focus of the Kickstarter is an expansion of the solo co-op mode and some upgrading of materials and components and all of that. And so at the end of this video, I will talk a little bit about what is coming because I had some conversations with the designer. And this video ostensibly is kind of a preview for that next Kickstarter. In any event, if you are not interested in how this game is played, you're going to want to jump ahead to the timestamp on the screen right now. And for those of us still here, let's go over briefly how this game works. And I'm focusing again on the solo co-op mode, but by seeing how the mechanics of that works, you should be able to extrapolate how the PvP works. Basically, you're setting up the arena and you are fighting until everyone's dead. And there are some differences with the way you get to activate characters. In the solo co-op mode, the players control 4 different heroes. And for this setup, I've just pulled 4 at random from the Kickstarter exclusives box, which I'm assuming is going to be available again, but maybe I'm wrong. And I have a tank called Sir Eric. I have a shooter called Zanak, the Fire Sorcerer. I have a tactician, which is Liana, the Pirate. And I have a brute, Merlot, the Minotaur. And they're out there. We have Merlot here. I have kind of hidden in this little corridor there, my pirate. I have Sir Eric right here. And I have Zanak right over there. Then this is clearly a dragon. And then I have 2 skeletons out there. Again, kind of show you some of the scale. So the way each turn is broken down in the PvE is you get to activate all of your heroes. And you can do it in whatever order that you want. The only thing I need to point out here is this token. This is the special ability ready token. Every time you use one of your special cards or you use one of these heroic actions that you have, and you choose 2 at the beginning of each game, you flip it over. And all this does is it just means that you can't use 2 specials back to back. Because at the end of any turn, when it's flipped over, you flip it back and it's ready again. It just kind of keeps you from just pouncing on something and just obliterating it right off. And each character gets 2 actions. They get their move action, which is they can move, and you know how far you can move because you simply look on your card here, and it tells you. So Sir Eric here can move 6. He has a base attack value of 6. He has a defense of 8 and 70 hit points. And they all have slightly different values, each different hero. Movement's very simple. I'm going to move my Minotaur here because he's the closest, and he has a movement value of 6. You can move orthogonally, or you can move diagonally. There is no odd rules about movement. Just move how you want, keep it nice and simple. After you've done your movement, then you are able to do a prime action. And a prime action can be a variety of things. It might be using an item that you've picked up. It might be just doing a basic attack, which means you just are getting the bonus that is the attack number that is on your player mat, which is not very good. You usually don't want to do that. It could be using one of your normal attack actions, which are things like Eric's Holy Sword. Here you'll see if you can attack from 1 square away, hits 1 enemy. It does 8 damage, and then it also has these various effects that it does. Or it could be one of your special abilities, which is notated by the gold up top, and you can use each of those once per game and cost this here. And you can also use those special heroic actions, which I mentioned earlier. There may be other actions depending on the scenario you're on, like pulling a lever or freeing a prisoner, or all of those things that you do in dungeon crawls. I also need to point out that on this side of the map, I have all of these different hazards that are already on the map. Again, the scenario will give you the exact details, but in general, if you step into lava or start your turn and end your turn in lava, you take damage. Same thing with the spike pit. We have these little portals here that teleport you back and forth. We have altars, which do different things depending on the scenario. And you get the idea. There might be swamp, there might be rubble, so on and so forth. And all of that is something that you want to keep in mind. And maybe you have effects that move monsters or you get moved. You get the idea. The bulk of this game is going to take place with fighting, as most dungeon crawlers do. So let's talk about how that works. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with Zanak all the way up here, who's being faced down by these 2 skeletons. Now is a good time to point out that you track your health going around the board here. And you'll see these 2 skeletons are both here on the 15. Skeletons, they have 15 health, they do 6 damage, and they have a defense of 6. And that'll make sense in a minute. Over here, I have my dragon. So you see it taps out at 70, but my dragon happens to have 210, so I've given him 2 plus 70s and just put it under. And that's how you track your health. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with good old Zanak there. Now, Zanak is getting kind of closed in on by these 2 skeletons here. So I'm going to take my move action, and he has a movement of 5. And I'm just going to move back a little bit. I'm just going to go 1, 2, just so it's a little harder for them to get to me if they come after me. And then I'm going to go ahead and use one of my actions. And I think what I want to do is I'm just going to use this fireball right here. And you'll see it has a range of 8 squares, and I hit everything within a 3x3 area. And they'll take 18 damage per hit. And then if I miss everything, the last target miss takes 15 residual damage. Will point out now that almost all attacks, if you totally miss, you still do a little bit of damage. So you don't have that. You do absolutely nothing. But so we're going to go ahead and we're going to say I'm going to use that fireball. Now that's a special, so I have to take my thing here, flip it over, and I will be flipping this card over and I can't use it again. Combat is very simple. It is done with a 20-sided die. And as I mentioned earlier, the skeletons have a defense of 6. And I know that because I looked in the scenario guide. And so both of them are getting hit because they're both in a 3x3 area. So I roll 7. That is enough to hit. So the skeleton takes, the green one there takes 18 damage. I have 15. So they have 15 health. So it has been killed. I remove it from the map and I take its token and I leave it there because that is now a piece of loot. And if I can get there, spend an action point, then I can draw a random, what's called a flask. If I don't get there before the enemy's turn, it will disappear. Too bad, so sad. And then the other one, and on that one, I rolled a 2, as is my wont. So the fireball just didn't quite hit it. Flames burst all around it, and it does not take any damage. Had I missed both of them, that second one would have then taken 15 damage residual. And then I'll take my fireball and I'll just turn it over and put it under my mat. And then what I like to do is, to remind myself who's gone, I just flip over all their action cards and I place them like that. So you see how that works. Now, I'm going to go ahead and activate my Minotaur right here because it is fun. And I'm going to use this Bull Charge ability. And you'll see I can move before I act. So I declare my target, then I get this benefit. You move up to 4 squares in a single direction before declaring your target. Then it does 11 damage plus an effect, the effect being if I moved 4, then I add 4 more damage because I charged in, and if I miss completely, it'll take 5 damage. So I'm going to go straight in and charge 1, 2, 3, 4 at this dragon right there. I'm going to charge straight in. Now, I'm not going to go into opportunity attacks because it does happen if you step out of a square that can be attacked. And in this case, dragons have a reach of 2. I'm not going to go too deep into that, other than I'll say, at that point, you get to use your basic attack stat. You roll it. If you hit, they take whatever the basic attack number is. And it's different for each boss, each monster, each whatever. Now, the dragon has a defense value of 7. So I'm going to roll and try to get above a 7. And a tie goes to the attacker, so I got my 7, which means that the dragon takes 11 damage, plus 4 more because I moved over 4 spaces. And so that means I've done 15 damage. So dragon goes from 70 down to 55, or I should say 195. And then I could, if I wanted, still use a move action and kind of move away, but for the moment I'm not going to worry about that. And so that's the end of my Minotaur. And again, it would have taken a reaction attack, which I guess I should just roll. It's not very hard. And so the dragon rolls its attack. It got a 2. It misses. And so nothing happens because a reaction attack does not get residual damage. Now my next one I'm going to go ahead and activate. And do note that at the end of that next turn, I would flip this back over, is I'm going to activate Sir Eric the Paladin. And all I'm going to do with Sir Eric here is I'm going to use this Holy Sword. But you'll notice the range is 1 square, and you'll see I'm 2 away. So I'm going to use my entire movement to do a sidestep, which just means whoop, I step forward, and I do not provoke any attacks. Then we'll see I can hit the dragon. It'll do 8 damage. I will be toughened, which means I will take less damage. And then myself or an ally within 5 squares of me regains 3 hit points. Flip that over. And again, the dragon's defense number is 7, so I just have to get a 7. Well, I got an 8, so I've managed to do 8 more damage to the dragon. And then someone will be able to heal, but nobody is hurt right now. And then I will simply wrap up, and I'm going to wrap up with my pirate, and I'm going to use this Black Water Taint ability, which you'll notice has a range of 2 squares. So I'm going to move myself out. I have a movement of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm 2 squares away, and I will do my attack. And I will note that down here you have special abilities for each class, each character. And in this case, because there is another ally adjacent to the monster, it will take plus 4 damage, and will also be what is called weakened. And so I will roll. And if I beat that 7, I will do 15 damage. Unfortunately for me, whoops, I rolled a 2 there, so I missed again. And so the target simply takes 5 residual damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then that is the end of my turn. Now we go to the enemy turn. Now, in a normal non-boss combat, what you would do is you would draw one of these evil power cards. And what this does is it tells you how
the enemies are going to react. And so in this case, first thing, all the heroes are now exposed, which means they're easier to hit. And then they do the basic strategy, which means they attack the closest person, and then they look at the lowest hit points and so on. You use their stats from the book. However, this is a boss fight, because boss fights are more interesting, so let's look at how those work. So what you see here is, first, and all temporary effects applied on the dragon, so anything I did goes away. Then, if Braddock was hit by at least one hero this round, place one new skeleton adjacent to the hero with the lowest HP. So I would take my skeleton and put it out all the way over here, because that's the one with the lowest HP. I forgot that this here would have degraded and gone away, and now I will use that to mark the skeleton. Then skeletons take their turns and attack the nearest hero with the lowest HP. Again, they have an attack of 6, and they would go through and they would make their attack. And this skeleton here would actually be moving this way. And so it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it would attack. And it has an attack value of 6. So it would roll against, wonderful, critical hit. Rolls against my pirate. So the skeleton does 6 damage base, so my pirate takes 6. And then because I was critical, it takes 5 more. I will note that when you critical, you can choose when to apply that damage if there's some kind of effect or ability going on. Then the other one's attacking, of course, Zanak. And Zanak also gets hit, but only for 6 damage. And now all of my skeletons have gone. Then we look through and we see the ghastly aura. Each hero adjacent to a skeleton takes 3 damage. One hero anywhere on the grid takes 5 damage, our choice. So I will just go ahead and mark 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll take the brute, have him take 5, and then these skeletons, these both take 3. Then we get into what is called the boss spell phase. And that is this deck here. It's like the evil power, except these are special for the bosses. And then you draw 1, and Cataclysm, and you'll see all heroes take 4 damage each, and then the attack is going to go on the nearest hero with the lowest HP. So I'll just mark down my life there, and now it has told me where the next attack is going to go. And now we get to the actual boss attack. And the boss has all of these specific abilities that it can do. And each round, you shuffle these up, and you draw one. And the only thing is, the one that you just did, you cannot draw 2 rounds in a row. So you set that aside, shuffle the others, draw one, then whatever you drew that time will not be available next time you shuffle them all back together. Now, so here I drew Bone Ambush. And you'll see it hits anything within 8 squares as a ranged attack, so it would provoke an attack of opportunity. It's going to place new skeletons and hit somebody and slow whoever's there. But what I'm going to do is something called an interrupt, because right here I have this ability right here. Interrupt Barrier of Light. So this happens right away and may stop his attack. And so what I do is I take 10 damage before I do anything. So here he is at 66, now he's at 56. I flip over the special ability, and what I do is whatever it says, the effects, negate the target's attack. So I just stopped it from happening. Then you or an ally within range regains 16 hit points, and I would heal somebody, and on we go. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and do that because I've kind of now shown you pretty much how everything works. There are a whole bunch of variables with bosses. You'll see this one here. Can't take more than 20 damage on an attack. There are a whole variety of things that bosses might be able to do, and I'm not going to go into it, but you've all played Dungeon Crawlers, you know how that works. That there is basically how combat works. Now I would say, had I not interrupted that, it's a ranged attack, so the dragon would actually do its own little sidestep to get away from the hero so it doesn't take an attack of opportunity. Now, there are a whole bunch of, that's not true. There's a few things that can cause attack of opportunity. There are a few abilities like mobbing, which is kind of like flanking in other games that give you bonuses. And there's a couple of different conditions that can be applied that make you take more damage, make you move slower, move faster, like you have in almost any dungeon crawl. Now, after you finish one of these scenarios, you go back to the quest tome, and it tells you the story, what's going on, and you start to have to make choices. And that's where this deck of cards comes in. And now, this is the very first one that I have right here, so I don't feel like I'm giving you much of a spoiler. Now, you read some story, and then right away, and I'm not going to show what all of it says, but on the back there you can see that it has some more information, and the quest guide tells you when you need to flip these things over and when you read what. But again, I guess you could have frozen the frame to see exactly what that is, but I'm not trying to do a massive spoiler here. But there are also, in addition to choices that you have to make, sometimes it says, do you want to believe the person or not believe the person? You're being pursued. What do you want to do? Do you want to stand and fight? Do you want to send some people on ahead? Do you all want to try to run? What do you want to do? And they all have different consequences, either good or bad, depending on what you choose. But there are also puzzles. And so, for example, and this, again, it's not really a spoiler because this is the first choice that you have to make, is you're trying to get into a city, and you see this thing set up here. And you have to decide how many skulls you want to put into these holes here. And in theory, you write it down. I didn't write it down. And then you go to an app, you plug in your answer, and it tells you if you succeeded or if you did not succeed. And then on the back of the card, it tells you what the benefit is for succeeding, what the penalty is for not succeeding. As you go through the game, every single quest you do has a stack of cards. Like this here is the stack that you need for just the first tutorial mission in the game. That is pretty much everything that you need to know about how to play the game. So what do I like about this game? Well, the first thing I'll say is, overall, I really enjoy the artwork. I love the character art, I love the monster art, I love the way just these little cards look. I just think it's beautiful. Now, there is one exception, which I will talk about in my quibbles a little bit later on, but 99% of the art I really enjoy. I think the components are very good overall. I will say some of the hero minis don't quite have the detail of the others, and I kind of think it's these orangey yellow ones that the detail just doesn't stand out as much. I'm sure if I washed them, it would look a little bit better. But they're not bad by any stretch of the imagination. They're just not the best. But most of them look really good. I mean, look at this dude. He just is a really cool looking beast. And the skeleton here, again, it looks pretty darn good. All the cards feel very good. They're not linen finished, but I actually like the way these particular cards feel. Everything is sturdy. If you go back and look at the unboxing I did, the insert is awesome, dumbfoundingly awesome. So all of that I really like. I also really enjoy the simplicity of the combat. There's not a lot of things you have to track, and even some of the more complicated things like mobbing and reaction attacks. It even says directly in the manual that if you're not interested in dealing with that, just don't use it. I like the variety in the attack cards that each character has. At the same time, they only have 2 and then 2 specials, so it's not as if there is much opportunity for a lot of analysis paralysis as you're playing. I think the varied nature of the hazards that can be placed out on the board are very good. Again, it's simple, so it keeps the game moving in a way that I really enjoy. I also have to say, I don't know why more games don't do this tracking of damage just around the board. I think it's fantastic, and I'll say that the bosses really do feel very epic when you're fighting them. It really is something where you have to get on top of it, or you know you are going to lose. They hit like tanks, and if you don't play smart, you will definitely lose. So I like all of that. I cannot say enough about how much I do enjoy the simplicity of the combat and the flow that it has. The next thing that I'll say is I really like the way the campaign is unfolding. Now, again, I've only played 3 quests and 1 boss fight because I wanted to get this review out. But I really like how these cards work in conjunction with the quest guide and the campaign tone. And in particular, I like that the choices really seem to matter. There are definitely choices that are the wrong choice. Does it end your game? No. But this game does not hold your hand. Sometimes choices are just bad, and sometimes the choice that seems the most obvious, had you paid more attention to what you were reading, you'd realize, oops, no, that really was a bad choice. I also think that this game does a very good job of implementing puzzles. I showed you the one puzzle earlier on, which again is the first one, so if you play the campaign, you're going to see that. I think they're very clever. I like there's the little app you go to, you plug in your answer, and it tells you if you're right or wrong, so you don't spoil it by looking just in the back of the book, though you can just do that. And again, the risk-reward of these puzzles is real, but again, not overwhelming. And this is the first one of these games that I've played where I really felt like there's puzzles, and I want to take the time to figure them out if I can. And so I think that's really well done. And overall, I'm very excited to kind of go through and finish this campaign. Now, let's move on to my few quibbles that I have. The first one is the leveling up system. It is fine. You get items like you do in every dungeon crawler, and then you're able to use your XP to purchase these different abilities, which are just static bonuses, 2 hits, or to damage, to defense, or whatever it may be, or health. And those are all just fine, and they're very useful, but they're not very exciting. They're just kind of simple static bumps that you get, so you're still playing the same character the same way, but for the most part, you're just getting a little bit stronger. There is the ability to get new attacks, new cards from other characters, so you kind of build up your abilities that way, but for the most part, it's pretty simple. I will also say that I don't know that the campaign has infinite replayability, which is something that everyone always likes. I definitely think you can play through the campaign 2 or 3 times for sure and have a very different experience, because there's already several things that I have not done, I've skipped over, and I will not do in this campaign. I already want to go back and try again and see what those are like. And then, of course, there's a whole bunch of characters. You can rotate them through and get a different experience. But there comes a time when, if you're someone like me, you're going to remember the choices you made, and you're going to know what's going to happen if you do that choice. So it will lose a little bit of the excitement. For some of the puzzles, you're going to simply remember what the answer is. And then the last thing that I'm going to bring up is I mentioned at the beginning how much I like the art, with one exception. And that is this one character that, to me, misses the mark. If you've watched with my reviews, you know that I am of the mind that we don't need super sexy female characters out there. For me, it's because it's just not practical. Like, it doesn't make any sense, the whole chainmail bikini thing, and that kind of takes me out of the world. And then I don't want to play this with my niece, if it's something like that, or I don't want to play with even my wife, because she's going to say, what the heck is this? And in this game, there are 2 pieces of art that I think fall into that. I'm going to show you one. I'm going to show you this one here. And I just think it's a little bit, well, 80s fantasy art. And this is not a horrible example of it, but when you compare it to every other female character in the game, it stands out. But the game came with alternate art for that character, and the other art is just, well, one, I think it's awesome to begin with, the other art, but it does remove that. So I will say 1 out of, I don't know, 30-something characters, so it's truly a quibble, but I do hope that the art in the expansion kind of veers the direction towards things like the pirate here versus this ice sorceress here. And so there you have it, folks. So those are my quibbles of the game. Clearly, I am a pretty big fan of this. I think this is a very fun game. And I will kind of wrap up by saying, now that I understand how the game works, I also think it's a good PvP game. Now, is it the PvP game if I wanted to do a kind of a skirmish that I'm always going to go to? Not necessarily. If I wanted more of a modern experience, then I would go for something like Omicron Protocol. If I wanted a future experience, I would go for Aristia. I might go for Rune Lords if I wanted a little more in-depth, heavier skirmish combat. If I want just a kind of light fantasy combat scenario, then yeah, this is one I pick up. I think it's a good option for that. But I think overall, this is a much better solo co-op game. I think this is a very good solo co-op game. Even so much so that I think the name Arena, the contest, is a little bit of a misnomer because, and yes, I get it, it's because everything's solved in the arena and that's where all the heroes come from, but I think it's so much more than an arena game. And I think that's really why this next Kickstarter to me is exciting. Now I'm going to transition here into my little bit of a preview for this next Kickstarter. So having talked with the designer, what I do know is coming is, well, first of all, they are getting higher quality minis, and the characters, I've seen sculpts and stuff, and they look way cooler. And again, I think these look pretty good already. But there's going to be dozens and dozens of hours of new campaign, maybe hundreds of hours of new campaign. In addition to that, and again, I like the campaign. Let me be clear. I think the campaign is very well done. In addition to that, there's going to be some changes to, one, the leveling up system, which I thought was fine, but again, a little bit simplistic. There's going to be skill trees that are going to be added and a lot more variety so you can level your characters up and you can kind of customize them a little bit more. The other thing is, and I don't have the details, but there's going to be a way to where there is a card rotation system that is added into the game. So instead of just always having these abilities, there's going to be some way that they are rotating through, and you may gain bonuses to other abilities if certain cards are in your hand versus not in your hand. And I think that sounds very interesting, very exciting. Again, I don't have the details. I just have the barest minimum of information on it. Cool. And it's a way to take your campaign and make it a little more complex. I don't know that I would want that in the PvP because I like my games to be quick, fast, let's go, 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 go. So I don't know that I'm excited about that for the PvP mode, but I am excited for that for the campaign mode. And there you have it, folks. That is Arena, the contest. I think this is a very good campaign solo co-op game. I really enjoy it. I really look forward to playing again. It looks great on the table. I think this is a good option to have as a PvP game as well. I think it's quick. I think it's light. I think it has a lot of character. And I think if you are a dungeon crawl type person, but you're not looking for a Gloomhaven level experience, but you want that campaign with a good story and good lore, then this is definitely one that you should look for and check out. And especially check out the new Kickstarter that is coming up. So as always, if you are familiar with this game and in my explanation I made some mistakes, please let me know in the comments with a timestamp and I'll get that into the Klingon subtitles. As always, thank you so very much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.